Honorable Wendy Gilmour, the Canadian Commissioner in Pakistan, has graced us here today with her presence. Welcome, Honorable Member. My name is Gia Junaid, and I'm the Managing Partner of Atlas Law Group. Pakistani Canadians are a hard-working bunch. Some of the hardest working entrepreneurs, media personalities, and professionals you will ever really meet. Many of us are first-generation immigrants, or the children of first-generation immigrants who know that while Canada is not exactly the land of milk and honey, it is nevertheless one of the best places in this world to live and to call home. Canada not only offers us a safe haven where our rights are respected, where equality and tolerance are preached, where superior healthcare and social services are provided equally to all, no matter how rich or how poor or in between the spectrum you may be. It is on this note that it gives me immense pleasure to introduce you to one of the most hardworking and humble individuals I know, Brother Ishaq Muhammad, President of Community Integration Services, who through this platform right here is doing just that. Brother Ishaq is really a maverick. I like to think he's someone who really marches to the beat of his own drum. He's got ethics and principles that he will not unwield on, he will not compromise on, but he has this really magical quality for bringing people together. Regardless of political affiliations, regardless of creed, regardless of sect, I know that a lot of us are here today because we stand with Brother Ishaq Muhammad, and especially the platform he's created for him. So recently, the Honorable Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney, has actually named Brother Ishaq as a community consultant. So he's working very closely now past Ontario, and he's made his foray into Alberta, and I'm sure we'll need to see great things to come. And he also, by the way, as if that all was not enough, he also serves as the engagement consultant and the South Asian community advisor to the leader of the opposition for the Federal Conservatives of Canada, and he works directly with the Honorable Andrew Scheer. And here's another fun fact that I've actually recently learned through Premier Kenney himself, which is that when Brother Ishaq became a Canadian citizen, the Premier Jason Kenney, who was then Minister of Immigration, personally attended his service and gave him the award of being Canadian. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving him a very warm welcome to Brother Ishaq Muhammad.
Thank you very much, yeah. Thank you, everyone. On behalf of Community Integration Services, I welcome all our honorable guests and a very, very warm welcome to the Most Honorable Wendy Gilmour, Canada's High Commissioner to Pakistan. I would also like to thank my Brother Shamim, for giving such a wonderful opportunity to organize this beautiful evening. Brother Shamim is a Vice President and Portfolio Manager with the Generation Portfolio Management Corp. Prior to joining TAMI in 2017, Badr was an investment advisor of high net worth client at TD Wealth. In January of this year, Madam Commissioner touched the hearts of so many in Pakistan and the Pakistani Canadian community in Canada when she and her team attended the Pakistan Stock Exchange, which has played a large role in developing the capital market and the macroeconomic impact on the capital market in Pakistan. Madam Commissioner opened the trading day on January 18, 2019 with the gong ceremony and said, I quote, "This is a great opportunity for Pakistan-Canada trading relationship for direct merchandise trade, for services and investment in both directions," end quote. She further added, "We are ready and interested to work with Pakistan business community and take advantage of abundant opportunities that Pakistan offers for socio-economic growth with multifarious business opportunities in a wide spectrum of industries and economic sectors." The Honorable Madam Commissioner has said Pakistan and Canada enjoy historical ties based on trust and friendship, and the two countries continue to work together to curb terrorism, promote safety and good governance, democracy, and human rights, and also tackle climate change concerns affecting the region. Madam Commissioner, we thank you for your services to Canada and to service that you have provided Pakistan by your office in Islamabad. We note the positive effect your office has had in our home country and all the work you have done to merge the gaps, understanding between Ottawa and Islamabad. As a Pakistani Canadian, we hope for long and prosperous relationship between our countries of origin and our new home country of Canada. Long live Canada, long live Pakistan, long live Honorable Wendy Gilmour. Now I would request to my brother Shamim to come forward please and have a fireside chat. Brother Shamim, brother, please come forward and have a fireside chat with Honorable Wendy.
I have been in Pakistan for about 7 months. I arrived at the beginning of November 2018. I am spending the time learning as much as I possibly can about the country. It is, and I've said to some of you before, I am struck by the fact that it is a country of 4 seasons, of mountains, of coastline, of plains. There's a lot of similarities between Canada and Pakistan that makes us all the better to forge a really positive and helpful relationship. First and foremost, I am struck by the fact that there are so many ties in people-to-people contacts. I think we are incredibly lucky to have so many Canadians of Pakistani origin and so many Canadians with family and other ties to Pakistan. And I feel myself lucky to be in Pakistan, and I can't go a day, I can't go a meeting without encountering people who have family in Canada, who are Canadian citizens themselves, who have studied in Canada, who might have done business in Canada. And so it really is a wonderful basis upon which to grow the relationship between our two countries. So I'm not going to, I know that the idea tonight is to have a chance for an interactive dialogue. I'm happy to take your questions as I can. I encourage all of you to do your part in representing Canada to your own Pakistani connections and to help us develop this relationship with a really important and interesting part of the world with great opportunities for Canada and for Canadians. So with that, I'll give the microphone back to Badir.
How do you see Mississaugas, whether they are in aerospace or whether they're in pharmaceutical sector or whether they are in media or education, connecting the dots between Mississauga as a city, as a municipality, and the municipalities in Pakistan?
Thank you very much. It's interesting on a trade perspective. Canada and Pakistan have had growing trade relations over the course of the last number of years. We are moving up to have about $1 billion in bilateral trade on an annual basis. That's a great number. It's better than it was. But if you compare it to, nothing compares to the Canada-US relationship, but Canada and the US have about $1 billion a day in our trading relationship. So to me, that speaks with a market of, let's say, 250 or so million people, depending on how you count the population of Pakistan, that is a lot of room to grow. We have at the moment a very traditional trading relationship. Canadian exports to Pakistan are primarily agricultural. Canola is our single largest commodity. Timber, some manufactured products, a growing part of the trade relations are in manufacturing products. A very active services sector. Increasingly, Canada and Pakistan are engaged in the trade of services. ICT sector is one area that in particular is growing. There are Canadian companies that are coming to Pakistan to look to source ICT professionals to create outsourced software servicing, software development in Pakistan. These are all areas that I really see that there is potential to grow.
So talk a little bit about how can Canadian institutions either partner with Pakistani institutions in terms of training these kids in Pakistan or further developing their skills, or how can we assist Pakistani youth come to Canada, become a part of our education system, upgrade their skill sets, and then act as a bridge between Canada and Pakistan?
Thank you very much. I see education and cooperation in education as one of the real potential areas of growth in our relationship. I think at the moment, and I may get the statistics wrong, so please don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure that Pakistan is the 5th largest source of permanent residents to Canada, and at the moment 15th in the market for students, foreign students coming to Canada. There are some challenges with credentialing of students in particular in Pakistan. So one of the areas that I could really see potential for Canada is developing partnerships with institutions of higher education in Pakistan to try and raise their standard, achieve consistency in credentialing, and to try and ensure that we have in Pakistan the standards required to actually have Pakistanis with undergraduate degrees and graduate degrees compete in the world market. There is no question that there are Pakistani students in international institutions all over the world that are performing to an incredibly high extent. Some of, winning awards, winning scholarships. I just saw reference not so long ago to a young woman who's gone to the United States to medical school, who I believe has won one of the top prizes in medical education available in the US.
Fantastic. So one last question before I open the floor for a couple of remarks. What is your favorite Pakistani dish? No, be careful.
I'm not sure I should answer that on the grounds I might incriminate myself. I was saying earlier, I was at one point in my life a vegetarian. I have since reformed and now eat pretty much anything. I was very lucky that when I was in university and right afterward, my roommate was from South Asia and had a mixed parentage, and we had a community that included both Indians of Punjabi origin and Pakistanis of Punjabi origin. And so I must confess to a preference for North-South Asian food, but I will eat anything so long as it's not terribly hot. But I would say paneer in any form, sag paneer probably my favorite. I am trying to learn how to cook while I am in Pakistan so that I am truly representational. I occasionally try and set my kitchen on fire, but it is sort of the ability to experience Pakistani culture and the very regional dishes. I mean, Pakistani food, I don't have to tell the people in this room, it's not uniform. There is Punjabi and Sindhi, and we go up to the Pashtun areas. I spent some time in Afghanistan. I very much like Afghanistan food as well. So it is one of the great pleasures. Now, I have to just be careful that I'm not eating too much for my country.
So that was a soft question before I asked the tough question. The tough question is, you spoke very eloquently about us being true to Canadian values, us representing diversity, and us engaging our local politicians and stakeholders from that perspective. When you engage Pakistani stakeholders, whether it's federal politicians or municipal politicians, or whether it's local chambers in Pakistan, are they ready? Do they understand that concept of inclusion, of diversity? Do they understand that if Mississauga Board of Trade, Brampton Board of Trade, Toronto Board of Trade took a delegation to Pakistan, it might include Canadians of Indian origin, it might include Canadians of Afghan origins, it might include Canadian Jewish community members, and so on and so forth?
I mean, certainly it is very important for all of us, both here in Canada and abroad, to make sure that we are true to the legal and cultural values that are here in Canada, which is diversity and inclusion. I know I do not pass up an opportunity in Pakistan to demonstrate that we here in Canada hold most dear our ability to, our Charter of Human Rights, our ability to practice religions as we please, to be respectful of others, the tolerance and inclusion that includes not just freedom of religion and practice, but also of our adherence to equality of our genders, sexual orientation, LGBTQ rights, and I have to say one of the most problematic issues that I have found in representing Canada to Pakistan is really a lack of willingness to talk about sexual freedom to be who you want and to love who you want, and sexual orientation related issues. There has been some progress in that area in Pakistan. Transgender rights are now enshrined in federal law, but there is still a long way to go with respect to communities outside of simply the transgender community. But freedom of religion is one critical element, and I know I make the point in Pakistan, I make the point here, that the Canadian Constitution does not limit anyone from competing, standing for Parliament, to be our Prime Minister, to be appointed as Governor General based on their religion or their ethnic origin or where they were born, as many other countries around the world does. So I think that's a message we just have to, it bears repeating. When we go to Pakistan with delegations, we go with very diverse delegations. We go with, I hope, a good gender balance, so that we are demonstrating the importance of women's economic empowerment and the importance of women being able to take their full role in community, not only serving in Parliament, serving in Cabinet, but also being leaders in the business community and elsewhere. So that is part of who we are here in Canada. That's part of what we represent when we go overseas, whether it is in Pakistan or anywhere else.
Back to the soft question. What's your favorite city in Pakistan?
I won't answer that.
We just got her picture with the car with the license plate Lahori, and it's already circulating on social media. So Lahoris have upper hand. That was fantastic. I think we have a couple of questions for the media. So, first question.
First of all, thank you. It was really a pleasure, hearing your thoughts. The question I have is, people have some perception, and what Gia alluded in her intro. People perceive that Canada has a quota for visitor visa for each country, and the moment we come close to the quota, the visa officer will start rejecting or refusing the applications, regardless whether how qualified the application is. This is one. If this is true, please help us understand. And number two, what would be the top two advice you would give to the applicants that they can be more viable to obtain the visa? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, first and foremost, I think it is important for everyone here to understand, and I'm sure many of you do, that as the Canadian High Commissioner in Pakistan, I have no formal role in the visa process. All decisions with respect to either permanent or temporary visas to Canada are the purview of the Department of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada.
No problem. My name is Majid. I'm representing E-Awaz and Sazo Awaz Radio. I hope you picked today and this season just to represent, and I wanted to see the North. But anyway, that's beside the point. Today, we were there and there were over 2 million people. And there were 2 incidents happened, one stabbing and one shooting. Okay, there were a lot of people and running around and everything else. God help that nobody got seriously hurt. But my thinking is that the whole world is watching what's happening there right now, and people are all over the place. Nobody is considering Toronto in general and Canada in particular as a terrorist country, that, there is something like this happen. And we, Pakistan Canadians, I went there last year too, a year and a half ago, and I felt very safe. My whole family used to go out 2 o'clock in the morning to go and eat. And there are so many people on the street at that time. But we are still calling that beautiful country as a terrorist country. And you in particular, you're living there right now, as Wendy, have you ever, let me put it this way, do you feel yourself safe walking around there? Or any incident happened to you that you say to advisory committee here that it is not advisable?
So
we'll get 2 questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Shahid Hashmi. First of all, Madam Ambassador, I'm very thankful to Islamabad High Commission, who is helping my clients to produce some electricity in Pakistan. So I want to keep it confidential, so I won't bring the name. The second thing is, it's not a question. We're dealing right now with the Minister of Immigration, and I also had a meeting with the Deputy High Commissioner in Islamabad, it's about the adoption. There are the many kids from Pakistan. We can bring it here, make their life better. I don't know if it's a role, if you can advise anything. Second thing is about the student visa. We always hear it. I'm also a little bit in education. That when, just like Dr. Ejaz said, when the college has given the admission, so that means all the credentials have been proved. Then after that, they don't receive the visa. And Asian countries have other countries have a very high approval of the visa compared to Pakistan. That's because, thank you.
Make sure you address both the questions.
I'm doing my best. I haven't actually written them down, so somebody will have to call. Yes, I recall. So with respect to the travel advisory, first and foremost, one of the things to keep in mind is that the travel advice and advisory is written for, I was going to say the lowest common denominator. That's not quite what I mean. But it's written for someone with no knowledge of Pakistan whatsoever, that has never traveled to Pakistan. In fact, it's written sort of with the idea in mind that the person who's reading it may never have left Canada before. So the type of threats and challenges in a market that are in a particular area that are identified are not necessarily those that would be foremost for someone who is very familiar with that country. So that's, I mean, the principle is we're trying to provide as much information as possible on what might be, what might happen or what might be the threat when somebody goes to a particular country. That's number one. Number two, the nature of the advisory relates to a whole parcel of different types of things. Criminality is one such thing, and I agree that certainly if you compare certain cities in Pakistan and the numbers of criminal incidents compared to other parts in the world, Pakistan is much better. I mean, there's no question. But there are other things which are still very prevalent in Pakistan that is tremendously unfortunate. The number of terrorist incidents that happen every year, the number of deaths that result from terrorist incidents. On the good news side is that things are becoming much better. There's been a steady improvement, certainly since about 2015, that we are tracking very carefully. When the evidence supports moving the travel advisory, then we will do so, absolutely. I personally, in Islamabad, in Islamabad Capital Territory, I move about freely. I am very comfortable there. There are other parts of the country that I would not be comfortable traveling in, and in fact our advice supports that we advise Canadians not to go there. Certain parts, certainly of the Northwest region, along the borders, there are still considerable number of incidents that could pose a significant risk to Canadians if they were to travel there. So it is, I understand that it is a very difficult and challenging advice, especially for people who travel regularly to Pakistan, who know Pakistan very well. But it is important that we are providing the best and the most accurate information we possibly can, targeted at people who may not have traveled there before. So that's one. We come over to the second question. Again, on the student visa question, sir, I am not in a position to respond to that. I would really encourage you to direct it to IRCC.
Okay. Other than security and student visa questions, what else?
Wendy, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Samina Tarat. Very nice to meet you. I'm here in the capacity of a community member, but particularly representing 770 AM, my sister's media outlet in the GTA. My question is perhaps contentious, and so forgive me for asking that question. But I have a question and a comment. We largely as a community tend to represent our own values in very discrepant manners. Other than Badr over here in this room, nobody said Assalamu alaikum to you today. Everybody said hi, hello. So I am very challenged as an individual when we talk about bringing values from Pakistan to Canada and taking Canadian values from Canada to Pakistan when we as a community ourselves don't do that quite well. That's just a comment. The question I have is twofold. One is around gender equity. Look around this room right now. Where is the equity? So I ask people in this room right now that we talk about taking Canadian values back to Pakistan. What about bringing our Pakistani values first to Canada as well and being fair in our communities for that purpose? The other question is, I won't name the organization that I work for. I can tell that to you afterwards. But I work with an organization that does large-scale investments in Pakistan. The biggest challenge we face is, unfortunately, the mistrust of certain people in Pakistan, because of which the whole country gets impacted. When we talk about millions of dollars of investments in healthcare, particularly in rural Pakistan and other areas, we have issues working with the local communities, local government, local individuals. So as the representative of Canada into Pakistan, how or what advice would you give us, firstly, around making sure that we can represent gender equity in Canada as the Pakistani community, but also in terms of working with Pakistani communities, what can the High Commission in Pakistan do to help Canadian organizations make investments in Pakistan? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Certainly the question of gender equity is very near and dear to my heart. Just by way of anecdote, I started my career in Canada in the Canadian Forces as a reservist. And I can tell you I was the sole woman in the room for many, many years in that particular context. I think all of our societies are evolving. One of the critical components of the current Canadian government policy is that we have a feminist foreign policy, and we have a feminist international assistance policy. Much of what we do, in fact, the lens through which we engage in around the world is to try and to advocate for gender equality, for women's empowerment. I'm very lucky. It's very easy for me to do this as a female head of mission, as a Canadian High Commissioner who happens to be a woman. This is a message that I take with me in all of my engagements. But I can tell you my male colleagues do the same. We, as Canada, are out to advocate for women taking their rightful place in society, for having the same economic opportunities, and to be able to contribute in an equal way to the economy, to culture, to the political environment, to make sure that we have 50% of the population actually there and representing their voice. That is crucial to everything that we do. And there's still, we still have a long way to go here in Canada, not just in the Pakistani community in Canada, but in all of our communities in Canada. I would love to see gender equality everywhere. But that's all of our job. That's the message that we take, certainly. With respect to investment, I'll be very quick. There are challenges, certainly, for Canadian investors in the Pakistani market. The regulatory environment is not always transparent. There's still very personality-based politics, personality-based decisions that make it very difficult to navigate the investment climate. What we try and do at the High Commission, what our Trade Commissioner Service tries to do, is help Canadian investors navigate through both formal and informal power decision makers and power environments to try and make informed decisions about where and how to invest.
Sorry, Wendy, since we were talking about investments, can you, for the benefit of the people in this room, I'm not sure how many people here know that Canada has been investing money in Pakistan regularly from a capacity development perspective for the last number of years. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Absolutely. So Canada has been a major player in the donor community in Pakistan, the Official Development Assistance Network, for 40 years or more. We were one of the original donors, for example, one set of very interesting projects in the north part of Pakistan, which is now extended across Pakistan to a number of other provinces, the Aga Khan Rural Support Program. We were the original donor in the early, and I think it was 1982 was that program started. We have been present in Pakistan's developed since the advent of what was then the Canadian International Development Assistance, CIDA, agency, and we continue to be very present in Pakistan. We have, as I said just a few moments ago, a feminist international assistance policy. Some of our most significant investments at the moment are in supporting women's voice in leadership, economic opportunities for women, developing women entrepreneurs, and also working with youth communities. Pakistan has a very large and growing youth population. I forget exactly what the percentage is, but it is considerable. So helping the youth get economic opportunities, achieve financial literacy so that they can become entrepreneurs themselves is a big part of our development assistance program. The other piece I really haven't spoken too much about today, but I am very conscious of, is the climate change agenda. Pakistan is among the top 10 countries in the world that are the most directly impacted by the changing climate and that are the most vulnerable to a changing climate. So some of Canada's development assistance is working in Pakistan, first and foremost, to develop resilience in communities. So we are contributing to the National Disaster Management Authority to put in place humanitarian response facilities. So in the event of a natural disaster, the necessary tools are there in place. We are also working with climate adaptation. So supporting, for example, through research programs, the IDRC, International Development Research Agency, I've lost an acronym. I'm in the midst of jet lag. But IDRC is investing in research to look at agricultural practices that will be adaptive to a changing environment, to more unpredictable weather patterns. I mean, just interestingly enough, somebody told me the other day that in the last 3 or 4 seasons in Punjab province alone, right at the time of harvest for the wheat crop, there have been tremendous hailstorms that have pretty much wiped out the wheat crop, which is devastating for many people who rely on those crops for their livelihood, to feed their families. So part of what we have to do collectively, not just Canada, but the global community, is develop the resilience in crops, new type of agricultural practices, perhaps shorter growing periods, higher yield, to be able to accommodate what is a changing climate. That's a big part of what Canada is doing globally and hopefully will be applied in Pakistan itself. I just hosted at the Canadian High Commission last week, in fact, a panel on how gender issues are integrated into our approach to climate change. Women and children are some of the most vulnerable communities to the changing climate. When disasters happen, they are more directly affected in many instances than men. So how do we adapt our policies and ensure that we are addressing the communities that in fact are the most vulnerable? This is a really important part of what we're doing in Pakistan, and also linking up what we're doing in our development program with commercial opportunities. Let's build on some of these well-developed networks and connections that we have had in the development community to try and create opportunity so that both Pakistan has the opportunity to develop, but also Canada.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions more. So, Jia Junaid.
Hi, Wendy. So I've had more than one female client, potential client, call me from Pakistan, because every now and then it happens that, the husband, the wife, and the 2 kids go over to Pakistan, and for whatever reason, the husband decides it's a great idea to seize their PR cards and the kids' passports and come back to Canada and just leave them there in Pakistan. So I get these desperate phone calls from Pakistan saying, what do I do? Because I'm going to the High Commission and they're saying that it's kind of like they get stuck between a rock and a hard place because they don't have any documents, and sometimes there's minor children, even if those minor children are actually Canadian-born children, but because you run into issues of parental consent and both parents need consent, and guess what, dad's in Canada and mom's over there and her literacy standard may not be the highest. And given that so much of your legacy seems to be, coming from a really feminist place, and even in terms of the projects that you've talked about overall, it's about supporting women. But what about those Canadian women or Canadian or permanent residents who are kind of caught in this limbo? And really, what kind of aid at the commission level is available to them? Because to be honest, even though I'm a lawyer, and I think a lot of lawyers would tell you that go to the High Commission, but then we get these tearful, phone calls coming back saying, I'm stuck here now. And guess what? They're asking for parental consent, and I'm neither here nor there. What kind of advice, obviously, can we expect straight from the High Commissioner herself?
You have a question?
Hi, Wendy. My name is Iftikhar Chaudhary, and I'm a businessman. And I was involved in also
Nominated candidate from the Conservative Party of Canada.
From Humber River, Black Creek. I was thinking about that a big sector in which both countries can cooperate is the power generation. And I remember when I was there and I was involved in the power generation sector completely, like in the KESC and with WAPDA. And there was a power station in Karachi named Canop, and it was built with the help of Canadian Nuclear Agency. And we need to revive that, and also there is big potential in that sector in that market for Canadian companies. And Pakistan needs that capacity because it is lacking behind what is, for its generation capacity is very less than what it needs. So in that sector, we need a lot of help from Canada, especially in the hydel power generation, in nuclear, and in also thermal. So in all those sectors, Canadian companies can do a lot of business in that market. There is a significant trade between Canada and Pakistan, and especially, as you said, there is canola and other pulses going to Pakistan. But obviously, we cannot consume all that canola which China is rejecting. We are not that big population. And on the other side, for the Canadian companies, I think they should engage with the local companies over there, and they should not do business like SNC-Lavalin did in Libya. And there are many trade houses and many local companies. They can give good help to Canadian companies.
MPP Khalid Rashid.
I have a very straightforward question. Since you are here, and as you know, Canada recently became the NBA champion. What's your take on our Toronto Raptors? That's my question to you.
That's good. Imran, come forward.
I'm residing in Islamabad, being a Canadian citizen. I just wanted to know, as I heard there's a American club and British club in Islamabad. So do we have a Canadian club, and how I can become a member of Canadian club? Very simple question.
First and foremost, when a Canadian travels to another country, it is important to remember that they are subject to the laws of that other country. Canada does not have extraterritorial reach. We cannot apply Canadian laws overseas. So if someone gets into trouble, if someone loses their documents, if they are engaged in a custody dispute in another country, they are subject to the laws of that country. Where a Canadian citizen makes themselves known to the High Commission, we do our utmost to help that citizen return to Canada. That's what's within our power to do. If it is a question of a missing Canadian documentation, we do our best to verify who they are and to provide them with the travel documents that they would need to return to Canada. Where the question of children come into play, it is very challenging and very difficult. If you deal with these questions, you know that is the case. We are subject to abide by whatever the custodial arrangements are. We offer lists of legal representation in Pakistan that people that are in Pakistan, Canadian citizens, or in some cases permanent residents, can avail themselves of, but the High Commission does not adjudicate those questions for them. It is a very challenging situation in many instances, and we do our best to assist people navigate their way through the legal environment, but it's not for us to make the determination on custody or to return children that may be Canadian citizens if indeed it is a dispute between parents. So I accept that it's very challenging, and believe me, I meet and see many of these cases, and I feel very personally very sorry for them. But my best advice that I can give anyone is before you leave Canada, before you travel to another country, sort these questions out. It is only Canadian law applies in Canada. You asked about the Raptors, sir. It is wonderful, I think, that Toronto has seen the Blue Jays win the World Series, and I think it was in 1992, 93. We took that crown from the Americans. We've just had the Raptors take the NBA championship. So we are demonstrating that Canadian athletes, Canadian resident athletes, are the best in the world in what they do. My challenge to all of you is that I've been asked repeatedly, why doesn't Canada have a team in the World Cup in cricket that's happening right now? So we need to get our act together and get more Canadians playing cricket. We have the population to do so. I have some plans for the High Commission. I think we have to learn to play cricket ourselves. Right. So we can address this after for those in Pakistan. We do not have a club that's open to the general population. The one thing the Pakistan government, and again, we abide by the law in Pakistan. The law in Pakistan is that alcohol is illegal and is not served to Pakistani citizens, certainly not to Muslims, and only for people under very rare circumstances. So we have certain facilities that are available for Canadian diplomats that are there because we have privileges and immunities and can avail ourselves of things like an alcohol quota available. But this is for the recreational services for the Canadian diplomats only. So I'm sorry that we're not able to provide a venue for the Canadian community. But one of the things, and those of you that have family and friends and people still in Pakistan, is I would love to see more Canadian associations that are community driven. And where the High Commission can support that, I'm happy to do so. I'd love to see more alumni associations. So all of you who've graduated from Canadian universities, if you know people in Pakistan that have graduated from those universities, encourage them to form associations. And we'll come to you. My staff and I are happy to contribute and to participate in Canadian community-driven events. But it really does take the Canadian community to take the leadership in that, and we will be there to support as best we can.
So, thank you very much, Wendy.